Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heave is gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining.
Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. Oh, he hit it. John Morant, insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Grizzlies win edition. My name is Keith Parish. The preseason is over. On to the regular season as the Grizzlies take on the New York Knicks on Wednesday night. This episode, the bulk of it is with Chris Herrington. We discuss our takeaways for the preseason, some of the big question marks we still have, some concerns we might have, and then we have some predictions that we go over for this coming regular season. Before I get there, just a few bits of news. The Grizzlies did beat the Pistons in their final preseason game. John Morant looked like a superstar once again, had 31 points while playing just 3 quarters. Zaire Williams missed this game once again. So we had some concerns in the second Magic game where kind of surprisingly, Zaire Williams, he wasn't listed on an injury report, but he did not participate. We thought maybe he was just given the night off. I found out at least later that he didn't really participate in the open practice. And then he missed this Pistons game. And again, there are no injury reports, but the news has come out based on the Grizzlies practice last Saturday that he's dealing with a sore knee. I saw some people talking about a sore wrist, but Taylor Jenkins said he's got a sore knee and, you know, they're hopeful he's ready to go on Wednesday night for the opener. The way I read that, using my learned experience of the past few seasons with the Grizzlies, sounds like he's not going to be available. Sounds like he's on the doubtful side, or if he's a questionable, he's going to be on the doubtful side of questionable. That's just my inference. That's not the official team injury report. They will eventually come out with an injury report ahead of the game. But to me, it sounded like Zaire Williams, good chance he won't be there, won't be available for the first game. Steven Adams left the Pistons game. He took a shoulder to the jaw. Corey Joseph dove on the ground and just clocked Steven really hard in the face. He left the game. Taylor Jenkins did say that he's expected. They assume he will be ready to go for Wednesday night. If either one of those guys misses, I think it's a problem. I think it's concerning the Grizzlies' depth right now. Just not having Zaire Williams, that puts either LaRavia and or Roddy into the rotation and tasks them with playing key minutes. That's a little bit concerning. If Adams doesn't play, well, we are fortunate to have Xavier Tillman, who, if Adams is healthy, Tillman, I think, is going to find himself on the outside looking in and not be a part of the 10-man rotation. If Adams is gone, okay, you can place that with Xavier Tillman. I think that is a downgrade, but one you can endure. If Zaire Williams is gone, then we need LaRavia and Roddy to have good games. And I'm a little bit nervous. I mean, I just did my wins prediction on Fast Break Breakfast on an episode that comes out on Monday afternoon. And I think I am going to stick with an over pick for the Grizzlies. Vegas has them at 48.5 wins. But whereas a month ago I was about, thinking they could easily win 52, 53 wins this season, I'm now way more concerned. And I'm concerned based on the preseason. I'm concerned based on the defense and the possible lack of defense while Jaren Jackson Jr. isn't there. I'm also concerned about this depth. If no Zaire, I'm concerned that Roddy and LaRavia playing at the same time, that seems a little bit scary. So the rotation we got in this Pistons game, where, again, they got up and down the court, they scored a bunch. It felt like a fun, classic Grizzlies win, but they weren't forced to do much on offense. They weren't forced to do much in the half court, and they also didn't really make their three-pointers once again. So I have some concerns about the Grizzlies' defense and also some concerns about their three-point shooting. But I think the rotation we saw in this game is going to be very similar to what we see on opening night. Yes, Aldama plays with the starters. I think Aldama is going to be a closer. We'll try to guess that in a second, what the closing lineup is going to be. I do think Aldama is going to be in the closing lineup. But the bench is going to be Conchar, LaRavia, and Roddy as interchangeable 2 through 4s. And then Brandon Clarke is your center. I think that second quarter is definitely going to start with Desmond Bane playing alongside the bench units. I think you're going to see some Santi and Brandon minutes together. I think it's very, very nice. Then in the third quarter of this game, Brandon Clarke played center, and they actually had tremendous success. I don't know how much of that was the Pistons letting off the gas. I talk about that some with Chris. But my projection for opening night, because I'm going to guess that Steven Adams is healthy and Zaire Williams is unavailable. I did a roster breakdown, and my guess is you're going to see Roddy and LaRavia play their normal kind of bench rotation minutes, maybe somewhere between 13 and 15 minutes. I think Tyus Jones is going to play a full 16 minutes. I think we'll get some Tyus and Ja minutes together. And then my guess is they're going to pair Santi and Brandon a little bit more, like at the start of the second quarter and fourth quarter. And then they're going to end the halves with Steven Adams. And I think, even though we didn't see very much of it in the regular season, I do think there will be some minutes of Brandon Clarke playing beside Steven Adams. And of course, all this is assuming no major foul trouble. But if you're on YouTube right now, you can see where I've created a rotation. This is my best guess for what the opening night rotation will be. I don't know if this is useful for your daily fantasy and projecting stats, but here's what I think the minutes breakdown is going to be. If the game is relatively close, I think Ja Morant's going to play 34 minutes. I think Dillon Brooks is going to play around 32 to 33, 34, around there. Same for Desmond Bane. I put Steven Adams at 27 minutes. I actually have Aldama all the way up to 26 minutes. I think Aldama might be a little bit of a sleeper in fantasy basketball. He's going to get, he might average 1 block and 1 3-pointer made. I think he might score double digits. Brandon Clarke, I still have him kind of low at 22 minutes. I think Conchar's going to fill in 18, 19 minutes. And then Tyus Jones, 16, LaRavia, 15, David Roddy, 13. I feel pretty good about that. There are some options, of course. We might see them lean heavier on John Conchar. They have done that in some of the preseason games where Desmond Bane, Dillon Brooks, and John Conchar have all played together. They could possibly close with Brandon Clarke and Santi Aldama. Brandon Clarke, if he plays like he did in the third quarter of the Pistons game, they might need him out there even more. We might see the minutes of Steven Adams turned down. But that's my best guess. And again, who do you close with? We have no more clear of an idea. Like, I don't know what I would vote. I know for a fact I want Ja, Dillon, and Desmond. Beyond that, I still think I would go Brandon Clarke and Steven Adams and just go big and struggle with your spacing. If those guys, if the defense isn't respecting them, I would rather depend on their offensive rebounding and their defense and the known quantity of that. But based on the preseason, my guess is we're going to see probably Santi Aldama in that closing lineup. We might even see super small ball. If the Grizzlies are losing in the fourth quarter against the Knicks, I'd be surprised if we don't see Ja Morant and Tyus Jones together with Desmond Bane and Dillon Brooks, and then pick your center. Maybe it's Brandon, maybe it's Steven. Who knows? But I guess I don't need to guess any further. I will find out on Wednesday. Anyways, before we get to Chris Herrington, just want to tell you guys, if you're in the Grizzlies area, you should probably lock in those Grizzlies season tickets. You can lock in the best seats at the best prices, starting at just $11 per game. Get your tickets now. Call 901-888-HOOP or click grizzlies.com. Also, finally, a little bit of news right before I get Chris in here. Breaking news as I record this on Sunday afternoon. The Grizzlies get the extension done with Brandon Clarke. Comes right up to the October 17th deadline. Chris and I even mentioned the question mark about the extension, whether it will happen or not. The initial report is 4 years, $52 million. As of this second, I don't know the exact details if some of that is unlikely bonuses or incentive-based, but it's very similar at $13 million average per year to what Steven Adams got on his extension. It's right in line with those numbers that we predicted. So this salary makes sense for Brandon Clarke, even if he never progresses beyond being a very valuable bench player. It's a fine salary, and especially with the rising salary cap in coming seasons, you're not going to regret having signed it. So Brandon Clarke locked up for 4 years beyond this season. It's always good not to have your players go into free agency. Dillon Brooks will be the big free agent on the Grizzlies roster this coming offseason. All right, now let's bring on Chris Herrington and talk a little bit more Memphis Grizzlies. Joined right now by Chris Herrington. Chris, how are you doing? How have you enjoyed this Grizzlies preseason?
What's up, Keith? I have probably watched a little bit less preseason basketball than I normally would.
What?
And so I think that's a good preseason for me.
You mean less Grizzlies preseason or less entire NBA preseason?
I watch very little entire NBA preseason.
Okay.
With the Grizzlies, for not their most recent game, but the 2 games before that, maybe the 1 game. I don't know. I was out of town for one of them.
Yeah.
And watching preseason basketball on my laptop during a family road trip was just not going to happen.
Not going to happen?
Yeah.
So you might be in a more calm place than I am. I'm not doing awesome. I feel like my optimism peaked about a month ago. And I was like, oh yeah, they're going to be great. And then I'm like, these are the concerns, but we're going to work it out. And for me, the preseason was, those concerns, they might be actual concerns. Like, we're not doing any of the same stuff. Our defense might be not good. It might be bad. And I don't know how to adjust it for it's just preseason. It doesn't matter. So I don't know. So you can be more relaxed about it than I am.
To the degree that I've watched, and I'm not saying, I was at the 2 home games. Yeah. So I've seen more than half of preseason basketball for the Grizzlies, but I'm having a hard time separating my competitive concerns from my aesthetic concerns, and like where one stops and the other starts. Like I watched the first half against Detroit last night as we speak, and like they were dominating, but like they look kind of sluggish doing it. Like I feel like there's a lot of slow, heavy dudes on this team around Ja Morant who is neither.
Yeah.
And some of them are quite good, like Steven Adams but Steven Adams, Dylan Brooks, Xavier Tillman, John Conchar, Jake LaRavia, David Roddy is at least heavy, if not slow. Like I'm missing it. It may be less meaningful come playoff time, which is the point. But from regular season standpoint, I'm kind of missing the pop of D'Anthony Melton right now. I think there's a little bit less zip.
There is. So it's weird because Ja had an unbelievable game and a game that was packed full of highlights. He had multiple jaw droppers. He had multiple breakaway dunks. But like you say, his running mates, where are our spectacular high flying rim runners to join him in this pursuit for highlights?
Well,
I know Zaire's secretly injured.
Right.
And he's not playing or something.
Without Zaire a little bit. So I asked John, I've written and talked about this, but I've been on your show because I haven't been on your show.
Yeah.
During training camp, the one time that I, was there at a little scrum standing around Ja Morant, Steven Adams was like shooting free throws like right in front of him where he was talking. And I asked Ja, I said, with Melton gone, you've lost one of your best alley-oop threats. And I said, look around the gym, other than Brandon Clarke and Zaire Williams, who in this gym is going to catch your lobs? And I think I knew what the answer was, but he didn't really think about it. He just looked at Steven Adams and, Steven can dunk, and then whatever. I think the answer is Santi Aldama.
It is.
I think Aldama is actually, and this sounds weird, I think Santi Aldama adds, relative to some of these other players, adds a lot of athletic zip in different ways than Melton in some ways. I think he's going to catch a lot of lobs, and I just think he brings a dynamism that I find refreshing relative to some of the other players I've seen on the floor this preseason.
So I agree with you that he's most likely to catch, lobs, maybe outside of Brandon Clarke, maybe outside of Zaire Williams. But
right.
As far as that dynamism and zip on a fast break, he's horrible on fast breaks. He might be one of the worst. He might be bottom 2 percentile, 1 percentile. As far as filling a lane on a fast break, you can't throw him an alley-oop on a fast break. You can't throw to him on a fast break to fin it. Like, I think he might be one of the worst NBA players, period, at finishing on a fast break. He may be more of a, So I think his transition, we're dealing with small samples, both of us here. Okay.
I think in terms of transition, I see a couple things though. I think trail 3, I think Santi Aldama trail 3, you're going to see some of that.
Yeah.
And I think this is not your ideal situation. To me, he looks more comfortable handling the ball on the break than running in the wing on the break. I could see some like Kyle Anderson style, get the defensive rebound and coast to coast with Santi Aldama.
I'm gonna beg to differ.
No?
I think
right.
his finishing off the dribble is outrageously awkward in space.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be kind of dumping on him, because if we talk about the whole preseason, he was probably had the best preseason of anybody, the most consistent as far as guys you had question marks about. Like, maybe Santi had a great preseason.
Maybe it's coast to coast with the assist at the end.
Okay.
but anyway, stand aside from that. My general point is, and I feel weird like I'm putting so many hopes in Santi Aldama, but I kind of am. I think he brings a lot of dynamism to the team in terms of the ability to finish above the rim, the ability to get off shots, actually having length. Like, he's not someone who's undersized in every way. He's actually a plus athlete when you consider length as part of athleticism relative to, like, again, Laravia and Roddy and Tillman and Conchar and like all these guys. I worry about the lack of athleticism. I know they've gone hard on like the gritty high IQ guys, who don't fit the athletic profile. I think with John Morant, you want some athletic guys out there too.
I agree. I agree strongly. And also the takeaway from the Pistons game that was weird, like where they were getting up and down the court. It was finally a preseason game where they scored a lot of points and they were getting the transition opportunities. I was like let down that the Pistons were being bad, where I was like, this doesn't show me anything. Jaden Ivey didn't get back on defense again. Or like, this didn't show me anything. We just threw a touchdown pass for a layup. Like, we're not working on anything. We're supposed to be executing.
Well,
there wasn't, it was just too easy.
My takeaway, I watched the first half of that game. I did not watch the second.
Yeah.
My takeaway from the first half of that game, there was a lot of, the Grizzlies are back to normal after these poor preseason performances. What I saw was a team that decided to put effort into defense against a bad team. And that's what I saw in that game.
Yeah, it was, again, maybe I'm just being pessimistic or cynical, but I was like, this is about the Pistons not doing stuff right now. This has not assuaged any of my concerns that I picked up in the second Magic game and in the Heat game, where it was just like, our offense is bad. And beyond that, our defense isn't great. And that combination is polar opposite of what we had last year, where the defense was great, outside of that, the first month or two of the season. And then, the offense was really, really good. And so maybe, again, don't just base on this preseason.
Assuming they're going to miss multiple weeks, which I think it will be weeks. It'll be weeks, not months, but it will be weeks, plural. Assuming they're missing Jaren Jackson Jr. for multiple weeks, I think we're going to find out stuff about the defense, because I wrote about this earlier this week at my Jaren column. Last year, using the cleaning the glass stats, filtering out garbage time, they were something like 85th percentile, 80-something percentile defensively whenever Jaren was on the floor, and close to 50% without him. And I think, the last two seasons, last year they had Jaren playing defensive player of the year level defense at that position. The year before that, when Jaren was out, they had Kyle Anderson having the best year of his career, but doing a lot of the defensive playmaking stuff and the team defense stuff that Jaren did last year. So they've had that 2 years in a row next to their big center. And they're just not going to have it. I think Aldama could honestly be better than Jaren offensively relative to what Jaren was last season, which is the low bar to clear. But they have no answer to replicate what they've gotten defensively, not just from Jaren last season, but from Kyle Anderson the season before at that position. And I think it may tell us something about the defense.
Yeah. So what is let's assume Jaren misses, what's conservative, like 15 games or something, like I think sixth of the season is like best case, or fifth of the season. Like what are we projecting this team? Like right now, I don't think they're going to finish top 5 like they did last year in defensive rating. I think top 10 is probably out of the question, because I don't think, not only they're not going to get the steals and the blocks they got last year, I think they might be subpar or like compared to last year. I don't think they're going to rebound as well as last year.
They lost,
so it's like, if you're losing all those things, I don't see how you can replicate the defense.
They sneakily lost a lot of defensive rebounding because a lot of people may not realize this. I think you probably do. From a advanced statistical whatever like rate percentage standpoint, Kyle Anderson was the second best defensive rebounder on the team last season. I think Melton might have actually been third within the rotation. I'm considering, including Conchar, who was not part of the core 10 when everyone was healthy.
Hopefully,
so Conchar will probably replace the Melton boards, but they lost a lot with Anderson on the boards. I think, last year they started poorly defensively too, with Dylan out and with Steven Adams. It took Steven Adams a while to get up to speed defensively. So they were pretty bad defensively early last season when they got off to a rough start. And then by the end of the year, they finished top 5. I don't think they're going to scale quite the same heights this season, but I think you could see a similar dynamic where they start poorly and get better as the season goes on. The one thing I'll say is that last season when they had, and again, they had Melton, they had Anderson, they had these other pieces, but they didn't have Dillon that much. He only played 30-something games. So last season when they had Jaren and Dillon on the floor together, they were dynamite defensively. Their defensive rating with those two guys on the floor was better by 2 or 3 points per 100 possessions, better than Boston's, league best number on the season. So I think there's a good chance they're still going to crack top 10 defense, but not top 5. So somewhere in that, 7 to 10 range is what I would probably guess for them.
So you've given me some good comforting material that's right up my alley. Like I'm putting myself to sleep at night with those Dillon and Jaren 2-man,
right?
Net rating combos. I'm like, oh, it was so good. It was so good. And also remembering that they were literally the worst defense over the first 6 weeks last year or 5 weeks, whatever it was.
And then to go back to my 2 seasons ago comp, and I wrote about this prior to last season, I think. You go back 2 seasons ago, it was similar story when Dillon and Kyle were together. And I think the dynamic is similar, where you had, this great on-ball defender. He's not getting rebounds. He's not getting blocks. He's not really getting many steals, but he is slowing down the primary on-ball scorer for the other team. And then you have, a big, combo forward, power forward behind him who's doing all the help defense stuff, doing the cleanup stuff. And that dynamic of Dillon Brooks starting their team's best scorer, and then a dynamic team defense guy cleaning up stuff all over the floor. I think that's a good foundation for team defense. And then with a big center to clean up the boards, whether it was Jonas that season or Steven Adams last season.
I do think that Santi, while he's not a good one-on-one defender yet for other power forwards, his help defense has been really good on the block shots. We saw that in summer league, and then he's carried that over a little bit in the preseason.
He's 6'11" and he plays it. He's not, I don't think he gives a lot of resistance, but he'll make himself big. That's one thing I've noticed in the preseason. He will make himself big around the rim. He'll disrupt stuff. I think he might end up being a decent rebounder, probably a better, rebounder than Jaren, which is not saying a lot, but I have relatively high hopes for Santi, not just to spell Jaren for a few weeks, but then to be a meaningful rotation player off the bench after Jaren comes back.
Yeah, I've definitely liked everything from Santi, essentially. And that's a great carryover from his really strong Las Vegas Summer League. What just generally in the preseason from what you saw, did anything surprise you? Like, what are your takeaways from this preseason as a whole? And were there any surprises?
I don't have a lot of takeaways. I think Santi Aldama was the story of the preseason. I think a lot of us sort of had him penciled in as the likely starting. A lot of people in Memphis had him penciled in as the likely starting power forward coming out of Summer League, just because I think that I've had skepticism, and I've not been alone, that they were going to ever start Brandon Clarke. But I think he has erased any doubt about that. I mean, they've started him, I think, every game. And so there's no reason to think they won't keep doing so, but how he played. Desmond Bane, other than Santi Aldama, Desmond Bane's been the most impressive player to me. And I know he shot poorly from three. He's 20-something%. I don't care about that. But everything else about his game, especially on the offensive end, you can see the other parts of his game starting to come around even more. And I think you saw it over the course of last season, the improvement. But to me, he looks a little bit quicker, a little bit more athletic. He looks a little bit more confident, not only shooting, but passing. He looks a little bit more aggressive and confident attacking off the dribble, with the slashing stuff in addition to the shooting stuff. And so, like, other than Aldama, to me, and the guy we'll probably talk about later, who only played 20 minutes or whatever, Bane has been the most impressive guy in preseason to me.
Yeah.
I'm set aside that Ja is awesome.
Ja's awesome. The thing that most surprised me about this preseason, and I want to get your opinion on, like, if it surprised you as well, or you find it meaningful. I think the thing that surprised me the most is how little Brandon Clarke played at the power forward in the absence of Jaren Jackson Jr. I found it really surprising that outside of the first game against the Magic, he played 2 minutes alongside Steven Adams, and then he never played power forward again, or he never shared the court with Steven Adams again. I found that surprising. And I also found it surprising that we never got Dillon and Desmond and Zaire playing at the same time. I thought that would be maybe like, oh, we'll try this a lot while Jaren's out, and they didn't play that one time. So either of those things interest you?
It is somewhat curious. They never got to the second one at all. The first one was more interesting to me. And this was a little bit of a called shot for me at the beginning of preseason during the training camp. And we'll see. It may prove wrong because I was writing not based on what I thought would happen in the preseason, because who cares? It was based on regular season. But I wrote that while it may sound counterintuitive, I think the absence of Jaren Jackson does not open up more opportunity for Brandon Clarke. It creates less opportunity for Brandon Clarke, because the Grizzlies, and I wrote this 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Grizzlies are no more likely to start him, but they are less likely to finish games with him, because the best way to finish games with him is next to Jaren Jackson.
Yeah.
Now, the thing I found curious about the front court rotations, and I actually asked this of Taylor Jenkins, that he ended up using it. I'm not saying I gave him the idea, but he used it for the first time the next game. And I'm not sure why he never got to it, but he hasn't gotten to it much. I've been surprised at how little Brandon Clarke and Santi Aldama have played together in the preseason, because to me, the idea of Santi in part is that he can roughly replicate some of the Jaren attributes in terms of defensive length, and being able to face up and be space out on offense. And if replicating those skills roughly works in the starting lineup next to Steven Adams, it should work, in terms of the dynamic of Brandon Clarke too. And I think once Jaren comes back, that's your, second team front court, I think. And I feel like Santi Aldama, Brandon Clarke actually makes a lot of sense together. I'm surprised we didn't see more of that in the preseason. But I think there's the real question about the Brandon Clarke thing's interesting, because he's not gotten the extension. The deadline's October 17th. And on one hand, like, he fits great with Ja, he fits great with Jaren. You close games with him. On the other hand, you look at last season, he was 10th, 10th on the team in minutes per game last season.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I tracked that a lot, where I'm like, guys, he played 19 minutes a game last year. Like, it's kind of weird. No. So if you missed the second half of the Pistons game, you actually missed this, Chris, because Steven Adams didn't come back. He got hit in the face.
That's right.
He got a big shoulder in the face. But by Corey Joseph, didn't come back in the third quarter. The third quarter, it was the Santi Aldama and Brandon Clarke front court. And this might've been the Pistons again, just letting the foot off the gas again.
I need to go back and
dominated. They dominated. Ja scored 17 in the third. Brandon Clarke scored 9 in the third. And they were incredible. That was Ja, Santi, and Brandon Clarke in that third quarter were 11 for 14 from the field together.
Okay.
They were again, it looked beautiful. And it was like, oh, Brandon's been underwhelming this whole preseason. Maybe he needs to be playing alongside John Santi. That's like the unlocking key.
Well, it seems like he is at his best with a front court partner who can play on the perimeter offensively, but gives length defensively, which is what Jaren does. And that's also what Santi does. And I'll be interested to see what happens. It depends on, Santi's been good in summer league and good at preseason. Regular season's different. We'll see. But I don't have a lot of, we haven't talked about these guys. I'm sure we'll get into it. I don't have a lot of faith that Roddy and LaRavia are going to be good anytime soon. Like, Santi was terrible last year. It took him a whole year to get to where he is right now.
Yes.
I would hope they have a lot of invested organizationally, it seems, in LaRavia and Roddy. But I would hope when Jaren comes back, if Santi is doing what he's doing right now, like, Santi shifts into that second team role, and that he is. I just have much higher hopes for him this season than the other guys.
Yeah, let's talk about LaRavia and Roddy. We'll do that right after this short break. All right, so you were saying you don't have that maybe high expectations for LaRavia and Roddy this year, I think they haven't shown a lot so far that makes you feel like they're ready to contribute at a playoff team NBA rotation level.
There's no reason to have immediate expectations for rookies drafted outside the lottery. Most of them are not good right away. I mean, I just think that's an unfair. I mean, not everyone's going to be Desmond Bane, right? Zaire Williams wasn't good early last year. They stuck with him and he got better, but I think there's no reason. It's not fair to expect those guys to be good out of the gate. But I don't expect them to.
I think one of my things, and it's been proven wrong. I've been wrong on this the last several years, where I'm like, I don't expect much from a rookie. I don't expect, I don't bake in a lot of internal improvement. And then I'm like, oh, Ja got way better, or Desmond Bane got way better. All the optimists were right. I was totally wrong by being like, until I see it, I don't believe in it. So maybe this will prove me wrong again this year. But talking about this offseason, where I'm like, I'm not super fired about the offseason because we lost NBA players. And we added rookies, and rookies are, for me, I don't count them as anything until they've proven me wrong. And this preseason and summer league, it's been like, oh, I don't see what those guys are going to give. Like LaRavia, he can't even, it's not just that the shots haven't gone in on 3-pointers. He can't do anything even when he beats his guy. Like he's coming to a stop, maybe looking to pass or to shoot like a turnaround 16-footer or something, but he doesn't have a way to get to the rim. Like he was going past guys off the dribble. We were like, all right, that's pretty good. He's putting the ball on the floor. And then it's like, oh, he doesn't actually have anything he can do once he gets a step on his defender. So I'm like, I thought it's like, all right, he needs to be the fifth guy, like the fifth player on a 5-man lineup just to take open shots. But even then I'm like, I don't know if that's even going to work until he adds a little bit more to his game.
I just think, the success they had was Zaire, even though like he sort of struggled, I think, more than a lot of people realized early on. But the success they had was Zaire with Brandon Clarke, with Desmond Bain, Tillman as a rookie played a lot. I just think these guys are closer to the Aldama, I think, level of thing where Aldama had to marinate a year. He made like 12, 13, 14% threes in the NBA last season, which is about what, I think LaRavia shot. In the
and by the way, I think in non-garbage time, it was 4.
Right.
It was literally something like, it was like 1 for 22 or something.
So, I mean, I think LaRavia and Roddy looked better today than Santi Aldama did a year ago. So we'll see. And I think they're going to get their chances because the team, where they are in the pecking order of the team, even if they're properly placed, is still going to be in a place that gets you chances because you're not going to have all 10 guys every game. You may not have them for many games at all. I sort of made this point about Conchar. People talk about Conchar stepping into the mountain roll. He was out of the rotation and now he's into the rotation. Last season, he played 72 games and averaged like 18 minutes a game. Like how much more, so even if you're the 11th, 12th guy, you're probably going to play a lot. And I think that's what they are. And I think they'll end up playing a lot, but I do think that's where they should be in the mix. And if they really struggle, then you got to find somewhere else to go. But I think there's a lot invested and they'll give them a long leash, but I don't think it should be 10-man rotation if everyone's healthy leash right now.
Gotcha. Here's another thing I'm concerned about that the preseason did not help me at all. It possibly exacerbated my concerns. The 3-point shooting. I've been quick to point out, we did not fix the 3-point shooting. Drafting guys who you think are shooters does not fix your 3-point shooting. In the preseason, the Grizzlies averaged 9 made threes per game. They're like 26th in threes made and 28th in 3-point percentage. They shot 27.9% from 3. Each of the last 3 seasons, they've made more threes per game. Each of the Taylor Jenkins, John Morant seasons that they've gone up in their threes made per game. I think they're going to go down, and I think that could have disastrous results for their win-loss record.
I think with the veterans, you assume, you don't assume anything out of preseason. You assume whatever career averages are. And so, so that's better for Tyus Jones. That's better for Dylan Brooks relative to the preseason. It's better for even Ja, better for Desmond Bain by quite a lot. But, even if those guys are all revert to their career norms, like you're still a bad 3-point shooting team, which is what they were last season. And so I think Bain has to get up more. And I've written about that a lot, talked about that a lot. He was, I want to say 37th in attempts, 3-point attempts per game last season. And he had a better percentage than all 36 guys ahead of him. So I think there's more gold in the hills with Desmond Bain. I think once Jaren gets back, it's really important for Jaren to have a better 3-point shooting season. I think even if you don't get back to what he was year 2, if you can get up to 36% and with the high volume from that front court position, that'll mean a lot. The fact if Aldama stays in the rotation, they'll have 2 3-point threats in their 4-man front court rotation instead of the 1 they had a year ago, and that will be helpful. But I don't, to your point about, some of the other rotation changes, I don't think you're going to replicate Melton's 3-point shooting from the regular season with Conchar is just not, his volume, I think, has been up a little bit in the preseason, but I don't have a lot of faith that he's going to be a high volume and high percentage 3-point shooter.
Yeah. So if you get to 12 made threes per game, which I think is a goal, I want to say in the playoffs, they were close to 13, but like, if you just add up the players who are in the rotation right now, like, I don't even know what your optimistic take is, how you get to 12. Because if you're like, all right, hopefully Desmond will make 3.5 this season, as opposed to 3. Like if Desmond goes up and then you're like, hopefully, Ja is of the healthy players, Ja was second in made threes last year. And so It's like, Ja's not going to make 2 per game. Dylan's not going to make 2 per game. And then you add them up. You're like, there's no way to get to 12. So I am worried that
Jaren, a lot when he shoots poorly, everyone wants him to stop shooting. People are like this for everybody, but especially with Jaren. the key with Jaren is not to stop shooting threes. It's to start making threes again. Jaren has got to shoot threes. It is imperative for him and the team.
Who you got? A better 3-point percentage this season, Santi Aldama or Jaren Jackson Jr.? Because Jaren was 31% last year, which is horrific.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Jaren on that, but I think Jaren's gonna get more volume too. So I think Jaren will be, but I'm talking about in terms of balancing volume and efficiency. I think Jaren will be the more impactful 3-point shooter. So I feel more confident to say he will be a more positively impactful 3-point shooter. To say that he will have a better 3-point percentage is, I think, a little bit harder thing to say, but I'll still say that.
I think it was.
By the way, Santi's, as we've established, he shot very poorly in the regular season last year. As good as he's been looking, he's still got to do it in the regular season basketball.
I can't remember the exact stat, but I believe it was something in the general neighborhood of all the players who attempted at least 4 threes per game. I think Dylan and Jaren had the worst 3-point percentage. Maybe Terrence Ross was in there.
But see, I think it's a lot of like specific recency bias on Jaren. I mean, if you want to get super recent, he shot well in the playoffs. I mean, he shot 38% from 3 in the playoffs on decent volume. He obviously shot great in his second NBA season on very high volume. He shot well as a rookie in the NBA at 19 years old. He shot well as 1 year at Michigan State. I think there's a lot more evidence that he's a good 3-point shooter.
I can't accept a college argument. When you have me until you mentioned the college stats. I don't know. Sure, he did. I don't know.
Well, if that was an outlier relative to his first 2 years in the NBA.
Yeah.
I just think whatever reason, his footwork, his timing, it was just a mess last season. It was a mess inside the arc too. And to me, that was more troubling than the 3-point stuff. But I believe that Jaren overall, wherever he is in his career, is going to be substantially better as a 3-point shooter than it was last season. I think last season is going to be an outlier.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm with you. Let's wrap up with some rapid fire. A couple things. Who averages more points per game this year, Zaire Williams or Brandon Clarke? See,
you got to make this interesting and throw Santi in there too, because I think it's going to be really close.
I think Santi's might be the answer, but I don't know.
I can't remember where I wrote or said this. I may have been on the pod with Drew, but I said there's a not insignificant chance that Santi Aldama has a higher scoring average this season than Zaire Williams, because I think the shots will come his way more easily. To me, it's a hard call. I think they're all going to be in that 10 to 12 range, all three of them.
Yeah,
I think will probably be in the 10 to 12 range. I'm going to go with Zaire just because I think they are desperate for more shot creation on the perimeter. I think they don't want to feed that to Dylan Brooks, and so it's got to go somewhere. So I'm going to say Zaire.
All right. Have you released your win total? What's your win total?
Yeah, I did that on Nate Duncan's pod like 3 weeks ago, and I haven't.
Oh, are you sticking with it? What'd you say? 51. That seems fair. I'm right around there. Part of me is like, listen, Ja and Taylor Jenkins, they've beaten their over under every single season, so might as well keep riding the hot hand. But then now I've started to be like, I'm concerned about the shooting and I'm concerned about the defense, and now I'm having these doubts creep in of like, hey, remember last year when Ja actually played? They only won 55% of their games.
That's an interesting thing. If you want to take like the games where Ja played and take that winning percentage and then extrapolate it over, I mean, you get to an interesting place. I think there are so many. There are 8 teams in the West, and I do not include the Lakers. There are 8 teams in the West that any of which could win 50 games or more this season. So I think there's a lot of volatility across the top 8, the top half of the West.
What's your hierarchy? I'll tell you right now where I'm at. I have Warriors definitely better, Suns definitely better, although I'm hoping for, implosion. I have Nuggets definitely better. I have
this is regular season we're talking?
Just right now. Yeah, just right now.
But we're talking about regular season. We're not projecting out to what we think will happen in the playoffs. Which to me is a different question.
Oh, if you mean including Jaren? I'm saying if Jaren was healthy, I still think right now, like as a general power ranking.
No. I'm saying regular season standings to me is separate from what you think is going to happen in the playoffs. So in terms of regular season basketball, I've got Nuggets, Warriors, Clippers, 1, 2, 3. It's my top tier in the West. And I've got Grizzlies at 4, but that's me in conservative. I think the higher upside plays are Minnesota and Phoenix. But to me, there are a lot more questions around them.
I got you. I think the Grizzlies can be better than the Timberwolves, but right now I think the Suns are just flat out better. And I start getting nervous about some of these, like the Pelicans and stuff.
Sure.
I think I'm more optimistic about the Pelicans I don't know. Maybe it's wildness, but I think I like them over the Timberwolves, which is I've been burned before being excited about Zion Williamson. So maybe I'm wrong.
It should shock no one if the Grizzlies are 8th in the West, because that's how good the West is this season.
Yeah. Anyway, let's do last one. How come we didn't get any more Kenneth Lofton Jr.? How can we get a preseason where he goes out and scores 17 on 75% field goals in his one preseason game? We never see him again.
So I did this with Drew on our earlier today. I'll do it again with you. I have a take on this that's half educated guess. I think half reasonable educated guess and half conspiracy theory. And so the reasonable educated guess thing is that I think their organizational plan is to take their time with Kenneth Lofton Jr. Zach Kleiman asked about Lofton at media day, like when I was way to say, we're really gonna, now that it was sort of out of the heavy COVID stuff, we're really going to use the G League more. And I think their plan is they think there's a lot of work there with him in terms of, conditioning, obviously, but also defense and shot selection and other stuff. I think they want to take their time with him, and they want to give opportunities to the guys they moved up for in the first round. I think that's pretty transparent. That doesn't mean he can't be playing in the preseason. So that's where my conspiracy theory comes in,
right?
Which is I think they want to tamp down the masses from, like, if they keep rolling this guy out there with their other rookies who they want to play more in the NBA this season, and he keeps outplaying them game after game after game, it's going to be harder for them to take their time with him from a developmental standpoint. I think they don't want the Kenneth Lofton Jr. Then this is, again, conspiracy theory. I don't think they don't want the Kenneth Lofton Jr. inevitability to overwhelm their other rookies who they're wanting to get into the mix quick.
That is a wild conspiracy theory. This is like Dave Yeager not playing James Johnson out of spite because the fans wanted James Johnson to play. Right. Another conspiracy theory. It's like that's a wild one. They want to slow down the hype train.
What's your explanation?
I'm lost. Why aren't we giving him a go? Why aren't we seeing what we have? When he beat Serge Ibaka. Oh, all right, he's old. When he beat Serge Ibaka and Brook Lopez off the dribble and just like bully balled them in for layups, I started being like, I need to see this fail. I need to see this go up against every NBA frontliner until it fails. And in the absence of that, I'm like, I don't care that much about watching Roddy and LaRavia play. I want to see if Lofton can do this against other top NBA players.
I agree. I don't consider this a novelty act, as fun as it is. If you redid the draft, you put all 5 players on the board, I'm taking Kenneth Lofton Jr. That's my first pick of those players.
Ooh, that's spicy.
I don't think it is. I really don't.
I mean, maybe again, like he couldn't crack the starting lineup in Summer League, like, so whatever it was, they're like, we think other players are better, or for whatever reason, we're going to keep him as a 6th man or 8th man or whatever it was in Summer League. And just hasn't gotten the playing time. But
I'm talking about long term, though. I mean, you're not drafting the guy for how you're going to use him tomorrow.
Yeah, he's got some tantalizing stuff. That's why you and me are in the Kenneth Lofton Union of Believers.
That's right.
Part of the club. Well, thanks, Chris. Appreciate your insight as always, and look forward to talking with you soon.
All right, thanks, Keith.